Paul Thomas Anderson, not to be confused with, is commonly considered to be one of the greatest auteurs of our time. And I mean, how could he not be, with films like Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, and Boogie Nights under his belt? Say what you will, even about Inherent Vice, but this guy has not made a bad movie. PTA's career is interesting in that there's a clear and visual split right in the middle of his filmography in terms of style. The first half is chaotic, energetic, and never really eases its pace. Here, we see a lot of the more striking quirks in his style that would later come to a cool simmer in his second half, opting for a much more matured, patient, and restrained direction. This versatility makes for an always changing discussion on what truly is Paul Thomas Anderson's best film. Everyone seems to have their own favorite, but one that tends to get forgotten in the conversation is his very first feature film, Hard 8. Although PTA would prefer you call it Sydney, but we'll get to that in a bit. The year is 1993, and with some gambling winnings, a girlfriend's credit card, and money his father set aside for college, film school dropout Paul Thomas Anderson made Cigarettes and Coffee, a 24-minute short film that brought a lot of attention and goodwill to the young director, specifically in the Sundance Film Festival Shorts program. With this short, we were able to see traces of what his style would become, like its precise camera movements, impactful insert shots, themes of human connection, and a starring role by who would become one of PTA's most iconic acting collaborators, Philip Baker Hall. The short film itself is solid in its own right, definitely fantastic for how young he was, but its true importance lies in it acting as the vessel that would bring Paul Thomas Anderson to Hollywood. Through its successful run, PTA was given the green light to expand the short into a full feature, which brings us to the film that would be loved by few and overlooked by many. Hard 8, which kinda sounds like a Dirk Diggler film, follows returning collaborator Philip Baker Hall as Sidney, a mysterious yet paternal figure who mentors a young, down-on-his-luck gambler with deep complications both past and present arising throughout. John Finnegan, played by first-time collaborator John C. Reilly, acts as the other character in the original short film, of course now being much more fleshed out and enjoyable on screen. The film also includes Gwyneth Paltrow as Clementine, a pessimistic and mistreated hooker, and Samuel L. Jackson as Jimmy, a slick and confident figure with a dark side. In typical Paul Thomas Anderson fashion, people watching can find themselves relating to the wide array of different characters, whether that be Sidney's goodwill and laid-back attitude, John's boyish naivety and warm heart, Jimmy's sneaking and suspicious demeanor, or Clementine's self-hating and depressive tendencies. If you relate to Clementine, just know you're loved. There's even a brief cameo with who would become my favorite PTA collaborator, the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, who, of course, completely steals the scene he's in. I mean, seriously, apparently most of this scene was completely improvised, and seeing what the late actor would later achieve in his career, it's not difficult to believe he was a master from the start. I'm so sorry for that unintentional pun. Building on what PTA did with Cigarettes and Coffee, every character here feels rich and lived in. Are they as interesting as really any of the other characters that PTA would bring to life in the future? Maybe Sidney has a shot, but as will become the running theme in this video, the good in this film will only improve with his forthcoming features. Now, I totally understand how unfair that sounds, comparing this whole thing to, say, a movie like Boogie Nights, or really anything else in his filmography, but again, this is his first film. It's okay it's not perfect. I mean, the guy was 23 years old when he started making this thing. If anything, it's commendable that he was able to see its flaws and improve in the exponential way that he did with his next one. Now, while the film's story isn't anything I'd necessarily label as unique or groundbreaking in any way, I still feel that the presentation is what really makes Hard 8 a step above the rest. While certainly not on full throttle, this is definitely a PTA film if I've ever seen one. For one, Hard 8 flirts with some Steadicam tracking shots, another future staple of PTA's filmography, to great success. It's not nearly as visceral and stylish as what he would later accomplish, but it's appropriate for the film and what I think is Anderson's greatest strength as a filmmaker, his confidence. Another component of the film that's worth mentioning is its soundtrack, composed by yet another future frequent collaborator, John Bryan. It's tonally exactly what the film needs, I think, and really balances the chill attitude of Sidney's character with the busy and stylish atmosphere of the casino. Compared to what Bryan would later do for Anderson in films like Magnolia and Punch Drunk Love, yeah, this soundtrack is chump change, but it established the connection we needed for those collaborations to happen. And just like most of the components of this film, it's what it needed to be. Nothing more and nothing less. Now, with all this talk of future returning collaborators from this project specifically, I'm making it sound like this production was nothing but a friendly cakewalk for everyone involved.
Boy, was I stupid for thinking that.
Hard 8 was anything but a cakewalk once it got into post-production. Being that Anderson had no clout in Hollywood because of his young age and relative unfamiliarity with the ins and outs of the industry, getting any say on the post-production side of things for Hard 8 was more difficult than sitting through movie 43. And holy shit, is that difficult. For starters, the original title of this movie was actually Sydney, aptly titled after the film's main character. But due to many factors, including Reicher Entertainment disliking Anderson's cut of the film and opting to cut their own, the title was eventually changed to Hard 8, a much more generic and less intimate name. After months and months of desperation, Anderson was finally granted final cut of the movie in exchange for the title being permanently changed to the aforementioned Hard 8, which he reluctantly agreed to. One could say this whole ordeal was a bit of a heartache. Please kill me. PTA, along with his fan base, still refer to this movie as Sydney, which is a habit I'm now trying to make for myself, but for the sake of not confusing people to the point of an aneurysm, Hard 8 will be the title I'll be referring to for the rest of the video. So, here's the big question. Is it good? Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, but, that's as far as it goes for me. The beginning of the film, replicating cigarettes and coffees almost to a T, does a fantastic job setting up the characters and their coming relationship. It's clear that PTA has a special kind of care and attention to detail with his characters, and that is immediately exemplified with John and Sydney's interactions with each other. And really, this carries over to the entire first act, and most of the second act too, organically establishing the world that Anderson is attempting to present here. My qualms with Hard 8 really start rising to the surface as we get to the third act though, which, don't worry, I won't be spoiling in this video. Speaking as broadly as I can, I just feel that the complications that occur in the latter half of the movie kind of feel artificial. I think this is mainly because of the fact that the film just sort of dissolves into something far less interesting than what we've experienced thus far. To me, it feels like PTA just needed a heavier ending and conjured up a situation that ultimately felt low impact. This, topped with what is in my opinion a surprisingly weak third act performance by Samuel L. Jackson, makes the latter half of Hard 8 pale in comparison to its first. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like the movie sucks or anything, that's far from the truth, especially when taking into account that this is PTA's feature debut. All that considered, this is a real quality movie, but is it a classic? No, especially when realizing that Boogie Nights would be his follow-up to this one. However, it is an important movie. There's no doubt in my mind that without Hard 8, PTA's stellar filmography would have suffered and not been the same. This was surely a needed stepping stone to where he is today, and for that, I appreciate it. The title? Not so much.